I stayed in Portland for a weekend trip in September 2016, and I booked a charming craftsman Airbnb on a quiet street lined with trees starting to turn orange. The house was over 100 years old, with creaky wooden floors and a slanted roof. When I arrived, the host had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Feel free to use anything, but please don't go into the attic. The lock sticks and it can be dangerous." I thought nothing of it at first. Old houses always had an attic or basement the owners kept off limits. That first night, as I lay in bed listening to rain against the roof, I started to notice faint noises above me. Not animals scurrying. It was heavier, slower. Something like furniture dragging across the floorboards. It made the ceiling creak in a way that sent a chill down my back. I told myself the house was just settling. On the second night, the sound escalated. I woke around 1 a.m. to 3 loud knocks directly above my bed. Sharp, deliberate. I sat up, heart pounding. Then came the unmistakable sound of slow, deliberate footsteps crossing the attic. I asked the host the next morning if the attic had storage. She gave me a quick, too-practiced smile and said, "No. It's locked tight. Probably squirrels. Don't worry." That night, brushing my teeth, I glanced at the ceiling hatch in the hallway. My stomach dropped. The padlock in the photos from the listing was hanging loose. The hatch was cracked open a few inches. I locked my bedroom door and pushed a chair against it. Sleep never came. Around 3 a.m., I heard the hatch creak open all the way. Then, the soft, deliberate sound of steps descending the ladder. They stopped just outside my bedroom door. I didn't dare look. By morning, the hatch was shut again, padlock dangling back in place as if untouched. I left that day, checking into a motel instead. The listing vanished from Airbnb a few weeks later. In June 2018, I booked a historic Airbnb in Savannah. The place had charm. A red brick exterior, wrought iron balconies, and inside, vintage furniture, chandeliers, and creaky floors. In the living room stood a massive, ornate mirror. The host left a binder about the history of the house, and one page highlighted the original mirror, supposedly more than 150 years old. It even said locals thought it was unlucky to cover it. The first night, I kept catching odd movements in the mirror. My reflection felt slightly off, delayed, like it was half a second behind me. I laughed at myself and blamed exhaustion. The second night, it got worse. I was reading in bed when I noticed movement in the mirror's reflection across the hall. A tall, dark figure walked past silently. I froze, waiting for footsteps. Nothing. Every door was locked, and I was alone. At 2 a.m., I woke to whispers. Not words, but a faint, drawn-out murmur. When I switched on the lamp, the mirror looked darker than the rest of the room, like it was a window into a different place. Then, in the glass, I saw myself, but not lying in bed. My reflection was standing, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. At dawn, I packed and left the keys on the counter. Later, curiosity made me check the listing reviews. One mentioned shadows moving in the mirror. Another wrote, "Beautiful, but the parlor feels watched." In November 2022, I booked a large cabin Airbnb outside Flagstaff. It was rustic yet modern. Stone fireplace, long wooden hallways, and several bedrooms, though most were locked with paper signs that said, "Owner's storage, do not enter." The first night, as I read by the fire, I heard faint scratching from behind one of the locked doors. Then came a sound that made my blood run cold. A cough. A human cough. I checked, pressing my ear against the door. Silence. I told myself it had to be the pipes. At 2 a.m., I woke to the creak of hinges. In the dark hall, I swore I saw one of the locked doors slowly closing, as if someone had just stepped out. I stayed in bed until dawn, not daring to check. The next night, I pushed a chair against the locked door closest to my room. At 2:30 a.m., a loud thud jolted me awake. The chair had been shoved aside into the middle of the hallway. On my final night, I spread flour in front of the door. Around 3 a.m., I woke to slow footsteps. In the morning, the flour was disturbed. Bare footprints, too large to be a child's, too small for an adult man's. They trailed down the hall and stopped directly at my bedroom door. When I checked out early, I glanced back one last time. The locked door was wide open. I didn't look inside, nor did I bother to ask questions. In February 2020, I stayed in an Airbnb apartment in Denver during a business trip. It was a modern high-rise unit, minimalist, spotless, with everything controlled by smart devices. The host was friendly in messages, but overly insistent. "Please don't unplug any of the electronics. They're synced to my system." I didn't think much of it. The first night, while unpacking, I noticed a small smoke detector above the bed. Something about it looked off. The plastic casing had a tiny pinhole in the center. I brushed it off as me being paranoid. Around midnight, I woke to a faint clicking noise. I opened my eyes, and in the dim light, I swore I saw a tiny red dot flash once near the detector. My chest tightened. The next morning, I stood on the bed and got a closer look. The smoke detector had no branding, no test button, just that pinhole. My gut told me it was a camera. I decided to test it. I unplugged the Wi-Fi router while I showered. When I came back, the host had sent me a message. "Hi, noticed the router went offline. Please don't tamper with it." That's when the hair stood up on my neck. How could he have known instantly? That night, I covered the detector with a towel and unplugged the router again. At 1 a.m., loud knocking shook the front door. A man's voice called out, "Maintenance," but never identified himself by name. I stayed quiet, heart pounding. After a long silence, the knocking stopped. At dawn, I checked out early. I filed a report with Airbnb, sending them photos of the device. Weeks later, I checked the listing again. Gone. But a new one had popped up in the same building, with the same furniture, under a different host name. To this day, I sleep with my phone flashlight pointing at every detector when I travel.